I'm eating cheese. Things have changed since I last talked about cheesy games about a year ago. For me personally, I think my editing has improved, and I got more comfortable on the mic. But going outside the very minuscule bubble of my YouTube channel, a bunch has changed in the realm of cheesy games. A remake of one of the goofiest games ever, Resident Evil 4, came out. I think about 1 billion different Yakuza games were released, and just in general, I played a lot more cheesy-ass video games. Games with silly protagonists, games that suspend your disbelief, and games that don't really care if they follow the rules or not, as long as they're entertaining and fun. They're easily one of my favorite kinds of games, and I really enjoyed myself doing the research for this video. And I think one of my favorite parts of this research was playing more Devil May Cry.
Let's rock, baby.
Yeah, these games are insane. If you're unaware, last time I said this about Devil May Cry 5. Its story makes zero sense. And I was under the impression that this was obvious hyperbole, but apparently not. I got a decent amount of comments on that video saying, "No, the story of Devil May Cry 5 does make sense. You're just stupid." This guy was saying that the story makes perfect sense, and then proceeded to have an argument in the replies about whether the story did make sense or not, and that really gives you the impression that the story is really straightforward. YouTube comments are a shit show, but regardless, people said I would understand the story better if I played the other games, so that's what I did. And I'm here to report that the series still doesn't make perfect sense to me, but I also really don't think it's supposed to. My opinion of this game is nearly unchanged after playing the other games, and that's just because the story is pretty goofy. It's really entertaining, but it's just kind of all over the place. In fact, I feel even more goofed out when playing DMC5 because I know all this crazy shit happened before it. You have to realize here that no amount of lore guzzling changes the fact that you turn into Michael Jackson, and a dude turns the earth into a truffle tree. And these two are the same guy, but good and evil, but this guy's made of ash and stuff, and then this dude eats the powerful apple and then turns into the funny sword man. The fact that I now fought a sentient helicopter doesn't change anything. The series definitely doesn't make zero sense, but I don't think it's a hot take to say that it has such a crazy story that it becomes comical. In fact, that's kind of the reason I liked it. It's not a bad thing if you like the specifics of Devil May Cry's story, but to me it's more about spectacle. The one part of that video that I now do disagree with, though, is that I said that you can tune out the story of Devil May Cry 5 without any real consequences. I really don't think that anymore. I think that keeping up with all these crazy antics is something worth experiencing. And despite the fact that Devil May Cry sometimes feels discombobulated in the narrative department, my enjoyment of the series was definitely enhanced by playing the other games. Devil May Cry 2 was probably the weakest one I played, but it still had its merits, and I had a lot of fun with 1, 3, and 4 as well. It was really cool to see how the combat changed over the series to slowly become more silly. The combos in the earlier games are more about continuously attacking the enemy, whereas I found in 3 onwards it's more about getting as stylish as you can. And I think that better reflects the more lighthearted and fun nature of the series, especially because you're able to swap between all your silly weapons on the fly. After going back to DMC5 to capture footage for this video, it was nice to finally grasp Dante's character evolution. He is still so cocky and grandiose even after having so many supposed learning moments throughout the story.
I should have been the one to fill your dark soul with light!
Devil May Cry is high energy action mixed together with an over-the-top story that has a lot of laughable parts, and I'm very glad that I played the other games. When the nonsense meter is tipped this far off the scale, it's hard to look away, and Dante's seemingly endless grand displays certainly define the games for me.
Jackpot.
Devil May Cry in particular nails a very important aspect of cheesy games, and that's the cheesy protagonist. Cheesy protagonists are usually very brash, very cocky, and way too strong for their own good, but they still have the power to do what's right. They can speak way too much or way too little, but as long as they're a vessel for kicking ass, then they'll work just fine. And there's another series that absolutely nails this. Looking at the original Doom from 1993, this is not exactly a silly game. In fact, it was probably the most violent game to come out at the time. Where it seems cartoonish and unreal to us now, it was uncontrollably grotesque in the 90s, which is why the game was so polarizing back then. As the years have gone on though, the Doom games have evolved, and despite all the blood and gore, the series recognized that the foundation they built with the original game had a lot of charm that was worth exploring. Doom 2016 was probably the series' biggest step forward in terms of developing its personality. The Doom guy works well as a protagonist in this game. He is so one-note that he has some humanity without the story being overtaken with character moments. They're still there, they're just earned rather than sprinkled throughout randomly. There are so many bits in that game where Samuel Hayden's all like,
"No, Doom guy, don't go and blow up that reactor, it will stop all the demons."
And then the Doom guy just goes and destroys it anyway, because he's just a silly goofball.
You need to remove each lens individually. Carefully release the hinges.
After 2016's success, Doom Eternal had space to get even more silly while still staying in theme. You have an insane arsenal that includes a shotgun with a grapple hook built in, 2 whole different types of grenades, one that freezes enemies and one that blows them up, and you also have a big ass sword in addition to a chainsaw. For one mission, you launch yourself with a big ass cannon to get to Mars. Doom isn't exactly equal parts cheesy and serious. It's just a gory shooter that ends up having some silly moments through the developers having fun with their premise. There aren't really any somber moments in the series, but there sure are some cheesy fun ones, and I have no problem with that. A lesson I think a lot of games can take away from Doom Eternal is its surprising playfulness. It's a gory game about killing demons with big-ass guns, but it's also meant to be more fun than straight-up shocking, and so it plays up to the surreal fictional parts of gaming. Now, if you were playing Doom and were like, I wish this game wasn't in first person, and was way sillier, and set in Japan, and you fought the mob instead of demons, and there was a very intense car racing minigame, then boy do I have a series for you. In most games, you can't really go from the most serious, heartbreaking, and tense moments to a dance minigame without it being tone deaf. Yakuza isn't like most video games. Yakuza was by far the most requested game to be covered on the last video, and I had a couple friends who told me I should try 0. After playing it, there's no doubt that this might be the cheesiest game I've ever played, and I just love it. A sequence of events that perfectly encapsulates my experience with Yakuza is this. I had a side quest where I had to go get a video game back from a kid who got it stolen from him, but the video game gets stolen off the robber by a different guy, and then it keeps going on. Anyways, I must have made a wrong turn or something, because I accidentally ran into a side quest where I had to pretend to be a movie producer so I could go help out these 2 film bros making a commercial, but then the real producer showed up and I had to beat the shit out of him. Also, this all just happened because I had to get a can of beer for a homeless guy. There is just so much funny stuff to do in Yakuza that it genuinely baffles me. While the amount of side quests and extra things to do did seem daunting at first, treating the open world as a different mode from the grave stakes of the narrative definitely helped. I would go to the club, dance to a couple songs to get my giggles out, and then lock in and actually go progress the story. It's not like the side missions are just tacked on though. Usually these are very funny and very thought out pieces of content that are there to entertain you beyond belief. There are a bunch of musicians that get caught up in a tough guy persona, but they actually like to help the elderly in their free time and make chocolate chip pancakes in the morning. You have a mushroom dealer who actually just sells mushrooms. And for all the Devil May Cry 5 fans, Michael Jackson is in this game too. Except this time his name is Miracle Johnson, and he has a music video shoot directed by Steven Spining that gets interrupted by the Thriller zombies, and you have to defend him while he does the moonwalk.
Knuckle fight!
The side quests in Yakuza 0 are like Family Guy cutaway gags, except they actually add to the immersion rather than subtract from it. Yakuza is one of the few games to actually make me cry of laughter from playing it, and it still has an interesting story to tell while doing so. Other games would lose focus with so much silliness in the world, but Yakuza does a pretty good job of not having its extra content take the strength away from the main narrative. It's weird, it's confusing, and it frequently goes between taking itself very seriously and goofing out like crazy, but that's what makes it so charming. Video games have to suspend your disbelief a little bit. That's pretty much just the nature of fiction. Even in pretty grounded games like Animal Crossing, you have to put the real world aside and accept that you're a villager in a place filled with talking animals. Or in Call of Duty, you gotta accept that you're a soldier who can get shot a million times and still be okay. I always like when games push that into the surreal, and take it further. When you're the son of a devil who fights demons with 2 motorcycles and nunchucks, then you've really tapped into some cool shit. Also, video games aren't really meant to be exactly like real life. There are games that have lots of detail that make it realistic, but at the end of the day they still exaggerate for the sake of entertainment. And I think that's what makes cheesy games so special. They don't even try to deny their bizarre plots, their goofy dialogue, or their silly gameplay, because that's exactly what gets the player to have fun. I guess what I'm trying to say is that Drake is still one goofy ass motherfucker. I mean, come on Drake, really? Grow up. Grow up.